Fluff your down as we barter by combat on this week's
Initial codes. Part 1. Initial codes. Part 1. Initial codes.
Thanks for joining me again, Trekkies. It's been quite a ride this season. But all good things must come to an end. Join me as we talk about Lower Decks Season 4 finale, Old Friends, New Planets. I have a feeling this is going to be a divisive one due to the ending, so let's start there. We get the near-perfect ending to the season with our main characters having drinks, sitting at their usual table, chanting, "Lower Decks! Lower Decks!" when a massive Orion ship comes up on the Cerritos, and it's time for Tendi to honor her bargain to come back and work for the family. I feel like this could be going somewhere interesting, but I'll reserve my judgment as to whether I like this whole Tendi going back to Orion thing till next season. If she's back by mid-season with fun tales to tell, that will be fine. If we just replace Tendi with T'Lyn just when I thought the Big Four had become the Big Five, I don't think I'm going to feel too good about this. Even though I do love me some T'Lyn. Her exit did feel a bit rushed as she gives one hug to Rutherford and transport complete. I do have a like for Tendi looking out at the starfield from the Orion ship, and as she turns around, she just turns on the Mistress of the Winter Constellations. Like that. And I've got one more like headed into the credits over said starfield, instead of going to black. Nice touch and outro score. It's here we get the confirmation of Shannon Phil and Will Wheaton reprising their roles in the intro, which we'll jump back to now. There's so much going on in this opening set at Starfleet Academy 13 years prior, and before the events of TNG's The First Duty. This seems to roughly answer the question of how old Mariner is. If we assume she was 18 or 19 in her first year at the Academy, then she's in her early 30s. Also, I've got a like for Boothby just being part of the setting. While we're missing Cadet Hajar, it was really nice to finally see the red shirt walking Joshua Albert. I had thought Wesley Crusher as the Traveler might show up and save the day in this one, but it was at least fun to have Will Wheaton do a little cameo here. As we set up Mariner's fixation on Sito, similar to the way Nog looked up to Red Squad in DS9. Another little cameo comes in the form of Mariner's rarely seen father, Admiral Alonzo Freeman, just happening to be on the comlink as Carol is ordered to stand down. Orders which she has no intentions of following. Though, when she did the trope of not expecting her crew to do a court-martial-worthy off-books mission to save Beckett, I kind of expected the crew to be like, "Yeah, no, sorry, Captain. We should probably just uphold our orders." Just because it would feel like a Lower Decks joke turning this classic trope on its head that goes back to at least the search for Spock, of which this season ender leans on heavily in its plot, with a fair sprinkling of Wrath of Khan, despite the season's theme poster promo being the voyage home. After Mariner has her flashback to the good old Academy days, she finds Nick is building Nova Fleet, because it makes him feel important. And his ship is the inspired name Nova 1, which in no way is a reference to Star Wars Boba Fett Slave One. There really have been a lot of similarities to that other Star franchise this season. As for Nick's grand plan, well, I'm not sure what it is other than collecting a bunch of ships and races with a super shield that could be taken down just by crashing a junk ship into it. But his backup plan is one of those many Star Trek II callbacks in the mini Ferengi Genesis device we previously saw in the season. Mariner wastes no time doing what she's done all series and risking herself by taking the GD on a tour of this solar system. As she ruins Nick's call to lower deckers everywhere, I have a love even for Rutherford making the self-actualized joke about Nick looking like Tom Paris, and Boimler not seeing it. I was hoping we'd get Tom Paris in the episode in some capacity, but this joke is the next best thing. I also have a much smaller And I know some of you aren't the biggest fan of these characters, but this one is for Guji, just as a background character. It's simple yet effective to check in on this character and let us know we'll likely see him again. My next like follows up on Carol's call to action to the crew, as to Anna's like, "Let's f it up!" And to Lynn responding with what better be an official t-shirt by next season, Cerritos Strong. More simple, yet effective. I have another like for Mariner using what sounds like a made-up stardate, but is her mom's command override code to steal one of Nick's stolen ships, the USS Pissarro. Command codes always sound kind of made up, and this is another great self-actualized gag at the expense of the franchise as a whole. Now, the USS Pissarro is a whole thing in and of itself. This is certainly an homage to Fabio Pissarro, who designed many of the former company Eaglemoss's model starships. The rabbit hole goes deeper in lore, as we've actually already seen a USS Pissarro this year at the end of Picard's Season 3, as the rechristened Enterprise G heads out into the great unknown. To be only about 20 years apart, the registries certainly jump, as the one in this episode is NCC 52670, and the one in Picard is NCC 97955. Mr. Pissarro sadly passed away last year, and though I'm not a collector of the models, this is a beautiful tribute to a very extended part of the Trek family. As Mariner evades the ships chasing her while stuck in this one solar system, she tries to appeal to the Ferengi's greedy nature and gets quoted the newly minted 289th rule of acquisition. Shoot first, ask questions later. If this is an off-the-cuff remark by these Ferengi, like Quark making up the 286th rule about Morn, that's fine. This could be a bit ambiguous, but my problem here lies in the fact that when Rom took over the position of Grand Nagus, there were only 285 rules. While it's shown between Enterprise and DS9, more than 100 rules get added, it's the fact that this doesn't feel like a rule Rom would approve. And even if the Nagus isn't in charge of such things, Ferenginar has been shown to be shifting away from its privateering, Orion-like roots, and towards a more honest yet compassionate capitalism. And this doesn't feel right as a modern rule, and gets a dislike. Now, back on the Cerritos, which has gone to Orion so Tendi can try and enlist the help of her sister in breaking through the Trinar shield surrounding the Detrion system. During this, I have the first of several likes for Rutherford saying to Tendi's sister, "No can do, Tendi 2, though not the only fun moment in this part of the plot, as Tendi challenges her sister to barter by combat. And I have a like for her champion Miglimoo fluffing his downs, puffing up, and going all flappity fisticuffs, kicking up a bunch of allergens that cause Ba'eth to fall. But it doesn't quite work out as planned, and is more like the ending of the Game of Thrones trial by combat between Oberyn and the Mountain, as both competitors are kind of out. But Ba'eth happens to be on top. This sets up the ending we've already talked about, as Tendi offers to return to the family business if her sister will let her pink slip on the Cerritos go and give them a warship. Even though said warship is a derelict, the crew comes up with a brilliant scheme to use it to punch a hole in the Trinar shields. This brings back the feud between Rutherford and Livik, where Samanthan stole the promotion from this overachiever, and leads to a dislike. I'm with Freeman. Why are we going back to the Mark Twain thing to help them work out their problems? It clearly doesn't work. As we see in the bar later, their problems aren't resolved, they're just on the back burner. And for the multitude of likes I've given to Lynn, this being her idea isn't the best she's ever had. Though, in the engineering department, I do have a like for Billups doing the Trek trope of engineers not liking it when you insult their ship, which goes back to Scotty starting a fight in The Trouble with Tribbles. They tractor launch this warship into the Trinar shield, with Cerritos under the command of acting Captain Brad Boimler. I'm giving this a like, though I do find it odd Carol took the entire command crew on the captain's yacht to get through the hole and rescue Mariner. This has been Bradward's dream that we see going all the way back to the beginning of Lower Decks and him just recording Captain's logs. And it was so great to see him live out his greatest fantasy. I have another like in here for the Captain's yacht itself, and specifically for Boimler saying, "We get to use the Captain's yacht? Finally?" I remember first seeing it as a thing in the Star Trek Encyclopedia way back in 1993, and going, why haven't we seen this cool thing the Enterprise D has? And the only time we've seen it in action was during Insurrection. And Lower Decks has used this one as set dressing previously, but it's wonderful to finally see it in action here. Though I have a dislike as they somehow find Mariner in the middle of an ion storm in this system. Their sensors shouldn't pick her up through that. But, I mean, why not add that in to the beam her out just in time with a phaser going through her chest trope? While Mariner is trying to hide in the storm, there are heavy overtones of the Wrath of Khan. From her Ferengi Genesis device, to the little horn-stab music callbacks, to the shot of two ships flying over the top of each other, but blinded on their sensors. As she decides it's time to self-sacrifice for the greater good, she rigs the device to detonate. As Locarno tries to disarm it, I have a huge like for requiring 2 strips of latinum to deactivate. This is the most Ferengi thing ever and is some great meta-commentary on the world today. Where, yeah, if someone thought they could make a buck, would probably put bomb safety behind a paywall. As Robert Duncan McNeill has been saying throughout the years, Nick wasn't redeemable in the way Tom Paris was. To the bitter end, he won't take help and goes out the way he lived, in a bang. This creates a supposedly stable Genesis planet, which has his DNA scattered throughout. So, don't be surprised if we someday do the search for Locarno. The further callbacks as the Matrix coalesces into a planet to Wrath of Khan, as the Captain's yacht flies away, were excellent also. While I understand Locarno's motivations, I don't really understand his end goal of pulling all these people together to sit behind a wall and threaten mutually assured destruction like a one-dimensional villain. This episode was quite a good end to a season arc, but not as good as the build-up from the previous episode. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this whole thing with Tendi shakes out next season. I'm also really looking forward to talking further about this episode live this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern with my friends on Buffer Time here on this channel. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider a like and subscribe below. I've got plenty of other content coming on this channel, but this marks a long break until whenever Discovery Season 5 debuts next year. Until then, peace and long life. I've been your host, Dustin Wing.